immigrant family. My parents came to the U.S. when I was about 2 years old, and I think when you're an immigrant to a country, especially the United States, this is part of the American dream is getting an education. So we make packaging equipment. If you want to seal a plastic bag, if you want to wrap something, if you want to ship something in plastic, if you want to various types of packaging equipment. Think about medical devices, think about mailing of goods, think about vacuum packaging food, electronics.
There's a lot of talks of, hey, this is a global pandemic. We're not sure if we're going to survive, we're going to make it. I don't want to come into work, or I'm scared for my life. Did any of that transpire, and how did you manage it as a sales leader in your organization?
Yes, certainly that happened. I think it was more of a case-by-case basis.
What advice would you have for someone that wants to get into business with family?
I guess my advice is, in any business, make sure they're the right partners, right? We've all heard the stories about, like, we thought it was great, we were friends, and well, maybe now we're not friends. And on the contrary, we're even closer friends. The sale doesn't stop when they sign the contract or they order what it is from you, right? Right. It doesn't stop then. It doesn't even stop once they start using your product. It stops when that thing is fully integrated into their day-to-day processes.
Would you consider possibly down the road, like, hey, Greg, I own this plant. I package a lot of gloves and stuff, and
pay me in Bitcoin. Fine, go ahead. I don't care. We'll have to figure out how do we logistically set it up, but sure.
All right, everyone, welcome back to SALESBIZ. I appreciate you all, as always, taking the time. Before we kick it off, folks, everyone knows the drill. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, drop us some comments down below, and go ahead and like this if you find any value out of this specific episode. Today, very special guest, as always, is a seasoned sales professional in both the marketing and business development space, with years of experience also in the manufacturing industry. And we're going to be talking more about that. He has a bachelor's and master's degree in engineering from Brown University and also an MBA from Georgetown. He's currently the VP of Sales and Marketing and co-owner of PAC Machinery. And I'm super excited to have him today to share his insight and his experience and overall journey, Mr. Greg Berguig. Greg, welcome, brother.
Thank you, Mike. Really excited to be on the show. A long-time listener, so it's good to be here and chat a little bit. So thank you.
Appreciate it, bud. Appreciate you taking the time. Let's kick it off, Greg. Very impressed with your educational background, first of all. So let's dive into that a little bit. Education is important in my family, but want to hear a little bit about your story. Did you always want to get that many degrees, or is that just something you felt like you had to do in order to get ahead in this world?
I think part of that is growing up in, immigrant family. My parents came to the U.S. when I was about 2 years old. And, I think when you're an immigrant to a country, especially the United States, this is part of the American dream is getting an education, right? Because, that's one thing that no one can take away from you is what you've learned over the years and the schooling you've done. So, I was fortunate enough to be able to keep doing that throughout life. And here we are. I would go back to school, to be honest. If I wasn't working full time and had some kids, I don't know. I'd find some other degree, or I do my MBA over again. Why not?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Maybe I should get my MBA.
It was a blast. No, it's a good time. You should executive program. You're with peers, other industries. You're essentially like this shooting the shit on business topics and ideas, and you're learning about fiscal policy, foreign policy, entrepreneurial ideas bouncing off each other. A lot of big successful startups started in business school. So especially in today's world.
I think you're missing one thing about networking. I feel like that's a huge part of specifically MBA programs, that collaboration, that level of critique and taking that past.
It's interesting you say that, because it's probably, I've worked in a lot of teams in my life, and I remember the first semester of my first year of business school, I really was on what I call an A team, where Everybody brings their A game. You show up to the meeting. Everybody's prepared. Everybody builds on each other's ideas. When there's to dos, everyone volunteers. Yeah, I'm on. I'll make sure this will happen. And I go back as that. I was on subsequent teams and this and that, and that really took me back to what you can do with the right group of people.
Absolutely. And once again, MBAs usually they're training you not to join companies, but start companies, create jobs as opposed to leverage jobs. So kudos to you, my man. I mean, that's impressive. Honestly, one of the things that my takeaways when it came to business, I wanted to go to law school. I mentioned this on the podcast many times. As soon as I saw that bill, Greg, that's when I said, holy shit, I don't know if I could stomach this. And I'm actually kind of glad I pivoted away from it. Law was always a passion, but once again, that bill, I don't know about forking over 150K.
Sure.
How did you feel about that? Was that something that's like, oh my God, this is something I have to pay for because of the experience? Or did you get a scholarship? How did it work for you?
Great question. I was actually fortunate enough to get a partial scholarship for business school. So, that happened. But again, I saw it as an investment in my future. I mean, again, I think it comes back to, I wasn't even born in this country. So the value in an education and just doing that, investing in your future. So,
and let's take
that. Some employers also pay for that as well. So
they do tuition reimbursement. Hopefully it's part of your company.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. A lot of different ways of doing it.
So background wise, let's take it even a step back. As you know, I'm an immigrant. I'm passionate about talking about this process. Tell me a little bit about where your family's from and how'd you end up actually in the States?
It's funny you say that. My grandfather started a business in the late 1940s. He was a tinkerer in post-war Netherlands and Amsterdam. Made little things, little speakers, things to like iron a tie, all this different stuff. And he came up with a little machine, little heat sealer to seal plastic bags. Plastic was just coming out by then, and he invented one of those. And it's funny, my mom he was an avid photographer, and he has probably thousands of slides literally from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And my mom just digitized them. And 2 nights ago, I was actually looking at photographs he took of the early 1960s. He was in, El Salvador, Philippines, Kenya, doing trade shows, selling this little heat sealer. So there we are, 60 plus years ago.
So the family actually started the business of machinery.
Yep, making packaging machines over in Europe, and then expanded to the U.S. and I've done that since then. I'm fortunate I get to work with my father, my uncle, my sister, my cousins, the whole gamut. So as you can imagine, lively conversations around holidays or the dinner table.
And passionate ones as well. We'll definitely dive into that.
Indeed, passion. Yes, passion is important.
So how did 1940s? That was probably a pretty crazy time around that. So how did that transition? How did you folks end up in the U.S.?
Just opportunity. There was a distributor of our packaging machines here, and we kind of worked with them and kind of helped them distribute here in the U.S. We did some manufacturing as well, and kind of grew that portion from there. So my dad at the time saw a business opportunity. He was living with my mother in France, in Paris, where I was born, and they said San Francisco sounds pretty good. Let's go out there. So, and I think life is all about those. People say, "Well, I need to get lucky." Well, luck comes to you. It's around. You have to just take those. How many times, Mike, has there been a situation where it's like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, or yes, I'm going to try that, and I don't really know, and I don't have all. We operate on imperfect information, right? So we regularly make decisions without having a clear idea of what's right and wrong, and you take a risk and you see what happens. And I think it's funny, startups today talk about, well, I'm going to create a company, and then I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to pivot till I find a business model. Well, that's just, I think, a synonym for life. Like, if something doesn't work out, you better quickly adjust and figure it out.
The pivot game, always strong.
Just,
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree with you more though, man. The risk taking aspect, I feel like that's a true testament of an immigrant family
yeah,
starting something from nothing, moving, taking that risk of leaving their home country behind. And,
right. I
you
think you have something similar, right? I mean, you can certainly relate to that, I imagine.
absolutely not from like taking a corporate and
No, but
idea from across the seas. I feel like that would take even massive loads of
yeah,
coordination and
sure.
work. But yeah, I mean, in terms of taking risks and moving to the unknown, absolutely. And those are the best entrepreneurs, in my opinion, man. If you look at the history, that
Hmm.
at that level of adversity and that risk taking, goes a long way. So let's talk about the business, man. PAC Machinery, 8 years now, and looks like you've spent even more time there before, according to LinkedIn and everything you've told
Yes,
me. An
your LinkedIn searching is
avid
good. So
LinkedIn stalker.
excellent. I mean, you can learn a lot on LinkedIn about anyone. I mean, it's funny. Just today, we have an upcoming trade show, in-person trade show. First one, it's PAC Expo Las Vegas. It's in a couple weeks. Largest in-person show in the packaging industry, and since pre-COVID, right? And we're getting these online inquiries and leads, and what's the first thing you do? You go on LinkedIn and like, who is this person? Like, are we connected? What do they do? What's their story? Because at the end of the day, it's all about building those relationships.
Yep. I think that's exactly what that tool is there for. If you want to watch a bunch of people twerk, you go on TikTok. If you want to find out what they're doing for a living and what their skill set is, you go on LinkedIn. So,
Mm-hmm.
PAC Machinery, currently in San Rafael, California. Tell us a little bit about the overall product. I know you mentioned, heat sealing and overall
Yes, so we
industrial
make
size
packaging
machine.
equipment. I mean, if you want to seal a plastic bag, if you want to wrap something, if you want to ship something in plastic, if you want to, various types of packaging equipment. Think about medical devices. Think about mailing of goods. Think about vacuum packaging food, electronics, things along those lines. We manufacture equipment in California and in Ohio, in the U.S. We have a bag manufacturing facility in Wisconsin, and then we have the sister company over in Europe that my grandfather started, and we have plants over there in Netherlands and Germany, where I got to spend some time as well. Live there for a bit, which is
Oh,
always interesting.
yeah, at Amsterdam. We talked about it. Fun,
We did. I think we'll
fun
leave it at
times.
that.
um, that's awesome, man. I mean, clearly you guys have a great footprint and sounds like it's a global footprint. So a lot of opportunity there. Let's talk a little bit about COVID, Greg. I mean, it sounds like this is a business that's required something that's essential. But talk us a little bit through about, first of all, how COVID impacted your business.
Yeah, I mean, I feel blessed to say that from a business standpoint, we did well. I mean, just the whole packaging space. I think initially there was the shock of COVID. I imagine it's like the Mike Tyson's punch out where you stun the guy for a second, right? And then after that, the whole industry kind of took off, right? I mean, people needed more packaging, whether it's medical devices, whether it's figuring out things for pharmaceutical, whether it's masks, whether it's mailing of goods, whether it's food. I mean, you name it. I mean, the packaging industry and ourselves as well have really it's
Exploded.
one of those industries that spans segments, right? So as long as there's capital in the markets and people can make investments, then people's business is certainly growing. So we benefited certainly from that. I think there's a couple things that happened during COVID to our business and our customers and the industry as a whole. One, obviously, we saw a acceleration of demand in packaged products, right? So, you think about toilet paper. I mean, that needs to be wrapped in plastic, right? Typically, or you think about anything in the food aisle, various things, right? So you got an acceleration of demand, right? And so people needed to invest in that. I mean, I don't know how many guys we had who came to us were packaging masks or COVID test kits, things like that, or mailing of products, right? So acceleration of demand, that's one. And two, you had a vulnerability of labor, right? All of a sudden, labor was perceived as, I don't know if that person's going to show up to work to like, I don't know what's going to happen with them. What if they get COVID, and what if that gets, impacts my people? And so all of a sudden now I need to automate, right? Automation becomes critical to a business, not necessarily because the the ROI made sense, whether it's like a 12 months or 18 months or whatever ROI, but just they have to automate to meet their demand. So we saw that, and I think obviously, so that was the initial COVID, just stunned, right? Like COVID's happening, like boom, I need to make that happen. And then, I can't tell you how many articles have you read about supply chains being disrupted, about shortage of labor? People left the workforce, questionable if those are going to return for whatever reasons. Like, it's clear that people left the workforce. So like, I can't, our customers, and any especially manufacturing, it's not like there's an excess of people like that are just knocking on your door day in and day out, like, hey, you have jobs available, right? Like, it's difficult. So
Was there
automation.
a point in time where someone knocked on your door and said, look, guys, we know that you're essential. We know that you're providing an invaluable service. Everything's being shipped to homes and businesses directly now, but we need you to stay safe and we need you to close your doors. As at any point in time that was a fear of happening or actually did happen short term?
I think immediately, as we kind of tried to figure out what the heck was going on, and I think maybe we closed for like a week or just something along those lines. But then at that point, it was just go. Like, our customers are, let's call it, medical device manufacturers. Our customers are, you think
Depending
about
on you to deliver these
electronics
supplies.
companies that make the silicon chips for computers and things like that, right? Our customers are shipping of goods. So like, they place orders. They place orders, like, we got to be there. We got to support them with parts, with new machinery. It's a great balancing act. I feel fortunate that we didn't have any crazy outbreaks or anything else, and everybody was okay. But it was a crazy time, no doubt. So
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of employee vulnerability, Greg, there's the management aspect of it, which we'll dive into later. But what about the, boosting employee morale of, there's a lot of talks of, hey, this is a global pandemic. We're not sure if we're going to survive. We're going to make it. I don't want to come into work, or I'm scared for my life. Did any of that transpire, and how did you manage it as a sales leader in your organization?
yes, certainly that happened. I think it was more of a case by case basis, and it was more, I'll call it, state specific. I mean, there is no doubt, if the last, I'm going to leave politics out of this conversation, but if the last presidential election like showed a divide in this country, COVID has quickly followed behind, right? So you cannot say that, you and I both, we call Northern California home. The sentiment around COVID in Northern California is the same as in Dallas, Texas, Cleveland, Ohio, or Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's not. Like, so, I think each place has their own way of dealing with it. And it's interesting. I mentioned you, Mike, that I lived in Europe for a bit. And what's so interesting about Europe is, like, it's so obvious. You go from one country to the next, right? Like, people speak a different language. At one point, there was a different currency, not anymore. People speak a different language. The architecture is different. The food's different. The culture is different. It's crystal clear, right? You go these, I think you can get from Amsterdam to Paris in like 5 hours. You drive through Belgium. It's such different philosophies, right? America, especially from the outside, or even living here for long, you think, yeah, we're United States, like but we're really states, right? And each state is truly different. And you got the red states, and you got the blue states, and you got the purple states, and we speak the same language, we have the same currency, but we've got different beliefs, and we have different ways of making a living. If I'm I'm growing corn in Iowa, or I'm a cattle rancher in Nebraska, or I'm in Silicon Valley Tech, or I'm a banker it's different, right? And you've got different things that you have different things that you're selling to make your livelihood.
Absolutely. I couldn't really agree with you more, man. once again, I have family overseas. I have friends and business colleagues, et cetera, overseas. They always say, "Oh, United States of America," and I love being an American. I'm a proud Armenian man, but America is my home. But sometimes I say we're not as united as we advertise. Unfortunately, Florida
Right.
and California are not on the same page. Texas and Oregon not on the same page.
No, it's true, and definitely as a foreigner, and you're talking about your relatives, right? Like a lot of if they haven't been, have you been to the U.S.? No. Oh, you haven't? No, but I've seen it in movies, right?
Yeah.
So what do you get? New York, L.A., and some like cowboy flick, right? So
My favorite movie is Independence Day. And why? It's not just for the title, but when aliens finally come down, that's the only time we decide to get band together and
yeah.
actually have a common enemy. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
uh, no, I appreciate it, man. And once again, I couldn't agree with you more. I work in a global space where you talk to London, they have a completely different opinion as opposed to New Zealand and Australia, and United States is no different, even between the states. Family business. Let's talk about that. You mentioned a little bit earlier about passionate conversations and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. PAC Machinery is a family-owned business, as you mentioned. It started off by your grandfather. What is it like working with family now, especially given the pandemic? Just high level. What's your day-to-day like?
It's good. We're all pretty invested in the business and making sure it's going to succeed in each way that we're focusing on. So, I think during COVID, especially, we got together in terms of our strategy and full. At the end of the day, a business is a collection of people doing a certain job or a task, right? Like they're getting something done, and there's different ways to do that, and there's different philosophies, right? So, and I think every generation sees things differently, in every person, right? I mean, there's some people that you tell them. They love to do work on their car and they love to change the oil in their car, right? Like that's like they're hands-on, mechanically inclined people. There's other people that are like, huh, I'm going to take it to I love taking it to the mechanic and having them do it for me, right? So I think in any business it's about during COVID especially, you really got to appreciate other people. Like you're just happy to like be around people, right? And you're appreciative. I mean, I was so appreciative of the people who came into work every day, who built the machines, who supported what we needed. So I think even in the family space, not to say there isn't disagreements on things, because obviously not everybody, in a marriage there's a disagreement, in a parent-child relationship there's a disagreement, right? But it's about finding ways to take care of that and move that forward.
Compromise. Absolutely.
Exactly.
What advice would you have for someone that wants to get into business with family?
Well, my wife says don't do it, right? But I think you just make sure it's the right partner, right? Whatever it is. I mean, there's so many examples of great family businesses throughout history and enduring ones, and it's one of those opportunities thing, right? Like, what is it? I mean, I don't really know. I think it depends on the scenario. What is everyone bringing to the table? I mean, I didn't have it wasn't the luxury of like, hey, let's start this business together. But you know, I guess my advice is, you know, in any business, make sure they're the right partners, right? I mean, we've all heard the stories about like we thought it was great, we were friends, and well, maybe now we're not friends. And on the contrary, like we're even closer friends. So
Yep. I got to be honest, man. I agree with your wife. I've been in scenarios where I've gotten into business with friends and dabbled a little in the family space. And there was always that level of, I wouldn't say pushback, but just that like slightly more uncomfortable approach of how do I talk to someone in my family about money, or how do I engage them in terms of this is room for improvement without getting that pushback as a brother or as a cousin or a blood relative as opposed to someone I barely know. How did you get past that? Outside of the monetary aspect of, but just blatant feedback to your brother, let's say, or your sister or your father, knowing that it could potentially hurt a whole different side of the world? How did you adopt it, and what advice would you have for someone that's kind of experiencing that right now?
Um, you're taking me back to some interesting conversations I've had over the years. I mean, I think in our scenario, we all push each other to be better, and I think there's somebody who sets the tone. I think my dad is probably the hardest working person I know. I mean, let's see, he just turned 73 and he takes a red eye just about every week to wherever, mostly to the Midwest. So he takes that red eye, he goes to work, he goes to a plant, he gets on another plane, and then he comes home a few days later, right? So when you have that as, I'll call, your role model, there isn't a lot of slacking that goes on, right? So and I think that's important in any business, right? I mean, the tone is set from the top down. I mean, we're builders, we're manufacturers, right? We're very hands on. We get involved. We get involved in the technical. We got a trade show in a couple of weeks. I mean, we're going to go and we're going to set up the show. We're going to put the machines in place, and I think that's probably also symbolic of our industry, the packaging industry, where it was traditionally a lot of family-owned businesses, and I have some close friends in the industry, and they're still family-owned, where their grandfather started it or whoever, right? And everybody's pretty, work hard, play hard. I think that's the type of organization you want to be in. Those are the ones that tend to be successful.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because I gotta tell you, man, that to me is the most impressive. When I see people succeed, that's beautiful. But when I see families succeed in a large organization and business,
Hmm.
that speaks a lot to not just how collaborative they are, but how close they are. So
Right.
kudos to you. Clearly, you guys are doing something to make it work.
I mean, it's not easy. Let's not sugarcoat, but
I would, I would
nothing is easy, right, Mike? Nothing is
exactly.
easy. Sales isn't easy.
Absolutely not. But I'm
No,
just
not at
saying
all.
that level of that the
Yeah.
when you add drops of blood into it, that just, in my opinion, takes it a completely different path. So the fact that you were able to figure that out and continue thriving, being there for 8 years, having the
Sometimes
business
I'm
since
I'm still trying to
1940.
figure. I mean, yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. So I've been in the packaging industry for 20 years. Obviously, it feels like my whole life.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So I'm glad you brought up the travel, because that was actually one of my points of discussion today. Work travel. You recently told me you got back from Ohio, I believe.
Hmm.
Sounds like there's a
Yes.
location there, but you've done global travel to Europe.
Yes.
How has that changed, Greg, since the pandemic, specifically, not just from a in-person
Yep.
having to deal business wise, but from a safety side? Is it still encouraged? Is it ill-advised at this point? And tell me a little bit about some of the challenges you've experienced with work travel ever since the pandemic started.
So I think there's a couple aspects to that. The first is international, right? And we have international partners and customers and things like that. And part of that is just figuring out what the current regulation is on travel. And do you have to quarantine? Do you not? Like, so that's the whole, things are changing and you got the variants. And so that's just complicated to figure out. Um, Unfortunately, and especially when you're dealing with international, where English might be people's second language. I can do a video conference all I want, but being there in person and sharing that meal with that person, and talking through things. I mean, I will, hands down, there is no substitute for that. Like, clear. And I think we have some projects that are kind of on hold just because of that. Um, Domestic, it's a lot easier, right? I mean, now it's easy to go from state to state. For a short time there were some quarantine requirements, and we have to get some letters and blah blah blah. But it's easier to go down and do that and get in a car. And again, like, we're here in California. Your listeners who are in other states will have very different concern. And for them, for the most part, travel is kind of like, why are you not traveling? Like, they're probably even asking themselves why they need to wear a mask. Again, we're not getting into a political or COVID discussion, right? But I mean, so I will say one thing: we, as sales people, as people, as you know, you and I talked, you know, you're in whatever you're doing, you're selling, right? I mean, selling is just
Yep.
getting somebody to buy into like whatever your point of view is. You know, my wife is a doctor and she's sometimes selling it, you know, hey, you know, do you want to do this or not? Or here's what I think you should do. And the patient obviously has to give their consent. The fact that you and I can be having this conversation and we're on a video screen. I mean, look at what Zoom did during the pandemic. Like there is it's almost become second nature to people, right? Just like, you know, you talk to people and you say, oh, what's your biggest surprise during COVID? If we were on Family Feud right now, if we were on Family Feud, one of the top 10 would be like my dad or my grandfather, my elderly relative knows how to buy things online from their smartphone, right? Like, I mean, how many times have you heard? Yeah, you know, I hear it all the time. Yeah, my mom now she's ordering whatever on Amazon or ordering clothing or whatever, right? So, second to that is I know how to get on a video conference call, right? Again, we grew up with technology. I'm pretty, you know, computers. I mean, I remember them all the way back to, I don't know, second, third grade when we had like an Apple II GS computer in the classroom, right? So not such a big deal, but the fact that people can get on a video conference has been the single biggest change. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm going to send a proposal to somebody and I'm going to say, hey, have a look and give me a buzz if you have any questions. No, I have your proposal. Let's hop on a video call. Like, let me pull it up on the screen, especially in our space of capital equipment. Here, let me show you some videos of it running. Like, what questions do you have? Who else should be on the call? I can't tell you the number of times during COVID, because we couldn't travel, that we had video calls where the customer who also was maybe they were working from home or their team was working from home, had people from different parts of the country hop on a video call to talk about a project. And they start talking amongst themselves about, well, what's the footprint of the machine? Do we have this? And they start talking about their warehouse management system, all these things that they are quickly able to, you know, part of selling a project, whether that's a piece of software like in your space or equipment in my space, is making sure the customer understands what they are buying, A, and B, how they're going to implement that solution, and making sure that all parties are aligned, that like, you know, I think we talked about it, you know, I can tell you you should get a hot tub in your house and you'll be like, great, I would love a hot tub. But like, there's a lot that goes on to making sure that happens, right? So how many times I hop on a call where the customers start talking amongst themselves via video to like figure out like, okay, this sounds great. Like, how do we go ahead and implement, and what do we need to, and I'm just, you know, as a salesperson, you got to know when to stop talking and just listen, right?
I hear you.
So
do you think though is that where the business is going? Do you feel like you still have to do those wine and dine trips because they're essential, or do you feel like your customer base is slowly, due to the pandemic, is starting to adopt technologies more and seeing the value of, I don't need to see Greg this week, I could just give him a quick shout on Zoom right now?
yeah, so I really think that depends on your customer segment. Like, we sell to a lot of different types of customers, right? So if I'm selling through distribution, you know, it's clear that like it's all about relationship, and our distributor, they're really an extension of our sales force, right? So they want to know me, I want to know them. Like they're going to trust me with their customer to like sell some products to help their customers. You know, I think that's where that personal relationship goes, right? But when somebody says, holy crap, I have a contract with Costco to wrap biscottis, and like we were doing it by hand, and we were doing like, you know, I don't know, 300 an hour, and we got to do over 1,000 or 2,000 an hour, like, help. I don't really need a wine and dine there. I just need them to like, I just need to understand their project. I need to show them like this solution is going to work, get the confidence, make sure they're ready for equipment. And I think this is important in any sale. The sale doesn't stop when they sign the contract or they order what it is from you, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't stop then. It doesn't even stop once they start using your product. It stops when like that thing is fully integrated into their day-to-day processes. The right people are trained. They have a contingency plan if they can't use that. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm amazed in capital equipment how many times people buy a piece of equipment and they don't buy the training. It's crazy to me, like, yes, we all agree the solution is good, but like you need to be trained. This is a piece of equipment. This is an extension of your labor force. Like you got to take care of this baby, right? This is not a consumer. It's not a monitor that just turns on and off like I'm looking at here, right? And it's a training. I mean, imagine, I was talking to one of my sales guys. I mean, imagine you drive a car, right? Okay. Do you ride a motorcycle?
I used to.
You did. Okay. Tell me about that, Mike. Like, tell me about your
Almost
first
got me
motorcycle.
killed, so I sold it.
Okay, well, that's probably good. Tell me about your first motorcycle. Like, how did you buy it? You bought it?
Yeah, bought it online. I was on eBay actually. Well, I knew the model. I knew I wanted a
Okay.
Harley.
Had you ridden a motorcycle before?
Yeah, during like I rented a few, and then
Okay. How did you learn to ride a motorcycle?
it was part of like some motorcycle safety course
You got trained,
training.
right?
And
There
I
we
actually
go.
hired. No, I'm glad you brought this up. Actually, I almost got myself, well, not killed, but hurt really bad during training.
Yeah.
So I ended
Okay.
up actually going on Yelp and hiring some guy to teach me some more maneuvers and stuff. So to say that
But it's a motorcycle. Why would you? That's my point. Like, just because you know how to drive a car doesn't mean you know how to ride a motorcycle, right? And you don't go and buy a Kawasaki Ninja or a Ducati or a Harley Davidson, and you show up to Harley Davidson and be like, hey, what do you do? I don't know how this works. They'd be like, dude, get training. There's instructors. Like, our responsibility is to make the motorcycle and make sure it functions as intended. Right. And
funny you mentioned that, dude. After my motorcycle safety course, I was like, I'm going to go to Harley and I'm going to test ride a bike. The second I walked in, some big guy walks up, like, hey, dude, so you want to test ride? Okay, which one? I pointed at one of their bigger ones. He's like, okay. How many times have you been on a big bike before? So I was like, never. He's like, so I'm not gonna put you in a casket today, but you should try maybe that smaller one instead. So asking those questions as a subject matter expert, like you probably maybe even saved my life that day. So I hear, man, like, but you have to be that person, right? To kind of show them the rope, like, hey, Mr. Customer, you want to buy this, great, but I insist that you do this training as well.
Right. But at the end of the day, I can't make them buy the training. I can't, you can only hold their hand at some point. You need to take responsibility for the product that you bought, whatever it is. Right. And so at some point, it's not like, this doesn't work as intended. No, at some point it's maybe I'm not properly trained. I mean, think about that in software. Here in the Bay Area is a perfect example, right? Like the thing about Salesforce, and is Salesforce training? I mean, I get CRM and I get no training and I say the thing doesn't work. No, you need to be trained on whatever it is. And it's up to you, Mr. Customer, to take that responsibility.
Yeah, they have black belt programs. They call them like Six Sigma black belt or project management.
Absolutely.
Like
I don't know, and maybe it goes back to the beginning of our talk about education and a philosophy. But from my standpoint, like, take all the training, education. I even saw it for there was this buyer office. This company went into the bottling space for some cannabis type product. I forget, and they said to me, "Hey, do we really need the on-site startup and training? It's like 10 grand. I was like, how much is the system? They're like 100 and something thousand. I was like, dude, you want the factory to show up, help you set it up and teach you guys how to, at some point you need to be the experts on the equipment for your process. So
absolutely,
it's important.
So talking about technologies, Greg, let's dive into, we live in the Bay Area. Everything's evolving. It's probably evolving here first before anywhere. Let's talk about a little about the AI space and how that may dabble into your business. Everything is being streamlined through machinery. Obviously, you're in that space already, but do you envision your business and your overall industry taking a step further with AI where the human component aspect of it is slowly getting removed, or do you not envision that happening anytime in our lifetime?
Where I see that happening, Mike, is in robotics.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing the vision and processing systems. I mean, there's a couple robotic companies here in the Bay Area that are doing incredible things. I mean, I can basically take a bin of products, random items, and we'll take the item out. It will be able to scan a barcode and place it
Right.
in a package, fully automated.
That's what I meant, like
So,
AI, like artificial intelligence. How
oh
is
yeah,
that impacting?
it's
Do you feel like
it's
it's going into a good direction, or do you feel like I'm actually worried about, potentially not having any more employees because there's a bunch of robots running around packaging stuff?
you know every business can always use more good employees, right? So,
Amen to that.
what we call, especially manufacturing, upskilling them, and we had it's about the employee understanding the automation that's being put in place, and like, tell you what, I mean, honestly, I mean, you can go on our YouTube channel and see some of those videos, and you'll be like, that, that you would be surprised that that's manually done, but that's how it is today. And I'm sure that employee would love to oversee. There's a term in the robotics industry called a bot tender, right? And essentially, they are bringing products to robots for further packing. So, from a labor standpoint, I I don't see any issues. I mean, think about your, I will say, like a restaurant experience, and with technology in the restaurant space, think about like the fact that what waiters and servers and stuff, like they can really like they can actually literally like have time to show up to your table and be like, hey Mike, how's it going, is there anything else you need, because you came in, you scanned a QR code, you ordered it online, it got served to you, you didn't worry about somebody writing it down. Like, if you want another beer, you just go and scan and the thing show. You don't have to flag somebody down. I mean, there is, you know,
Still a human component to it, basically, that's essential in order to
no,
continue.
and I think that's key to technology. Technology is there to make your life better, and if used in the right way.
I also I
Obviously,
asked this because I'm in the workflow automation
yes, you
technology
are
space.
absolutely, for documents, right?
Yeah.
Signing of documents. There you go.
And it's not just documents, so it's literally, we call them bots, believe it or not.
Okay.
We, let's say, have a pre-fillable Excel bot. So if you fill out a document, all that information that you've populated in there, historically someone would have to print it out or look at the screen and re-enter that information in. Well, this bot will actually merge that information in there automatically
Mm-hmm.
without
Right.
anything done. I just have to set it up one time. Where I'm going with that is that not many people are privy to that because of, well, if the bot's going to do that, what am I going to do? Why am I needed at this point? And sometimes that level of anxiety and sometimes taking it a step further makes you a little bit more curious about, am I really going to be needed? That's what I was saying is, are you saying any of that happened?
Yeah, we're not. I think that's just about, again, we see it with just our machines that allow for automation. I mean, perfect example, right? It's really simple. There's an abundance of companies that take a reclosable zipper, I'll call it brand name Ziploc bag, right? They take a bag, they open it up, they put some parts in it, they close it by hand, and they put a label on it, right? Or they take a bag that's going to be mailed, that somebody scans something, they take a shipping label, they put it on it, they open it up, they put the goods in, they close it, boom, and send it off. Well, we have automation that can go 5 to 10 times faster,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's more pleasant for the operator, right? Like, no longer they have to take the bag and close it and this and that. Basically, they just take the item, drop it in, just simply drop it in, right? And they can do that at a rate. If one person is doing about 2 to 3 a minute, the operator can do 20 to 30 a minute. You think they don't enjoy themselves more in what they do, and then they have more time to focus on other things. So,
Yeah.
you know,
End of day technology. I don't know how fast this AI business is going, but I will say that when it comes to errors and a human actually taking the time to use their ingenuity, user experience to pivot and maybe make some changes in order to make it work, I feel like, I don't know where robots are, but I don't think they're that advanced yet. So I think we're good.
no, I mean, there's certainly areas, but I think I mean, I'm a lover of technology. I'm always looking for, what's the newest, the most exciting. I recently got myself an electric car, and it's just it's basically a computer on wheels, right? But there's some things that are for show, and there's some things that are like true benefits, right? You like go on a long road trip, and this thing will switch lanes for you and speed up and slow down and go from one freeway to the next, and like then I can be more relaxed on my destination, right? Or like I can have a conversation with my family in the car and not, have to worry as much as, and maybe make a mistake. I mean, if I get tired or whatever. So I think it's a win for humanity, Mike.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, man. So let's talk a little bit about the newest and greatest. We have this concept of crypto now entering space.
Yeah.
New currency, and a lot of businesses are slowly starting to adopt that
Yep.
as a way of, hey, Greg, instead of sending me cash, pay Bitcoin for this machinery.
Right.
What is your thoughts, first of all, on crypto? And well, let's start there. What are your thoughts? And I like to elaborate a little bit more based on what you say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good topic. It doesn't apply so much in our own space. I mean, you think about an international customer where they can just wire us the funds for a piece. I mean, I'll sell a machine to, to sell a machine to Guatemala, the Philippines, South. I mean, you name it. It doesn't have to be. I mean, they wire us the funds, like then we send the equipment, right? So that's not such. Most companies can do that. Where I think the real benefit is on individual, like smaller sellers, where as somebody, again, here we go, America versus other parts of the world. Like in America, you'd be like, yeah, it's cool, but like, I can just Venmo, PayPal, like what's the big deal, right? But like the rest of the world cannot, right? You mentioned, your Armenian background, you think about that part of the world, and I mean, when you think about stability of banks and things like that, crypto is an amazing, it's an amazing currency or way of like doing more global commerce, right? Like if I don't know, I mean, you go on Instagram, you see some artists that's followed, how many people buy art on Instagram these days, right? They see some artists, and they could be somewhere in Africa, they could be in South America, they could be wherever, right? And like, Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Like here you go. Like send me a thing. Or you think about, I was having lunch today with a friend of mine, and we were talking about crypto actually. And it was like, think about like if you're gonna hire some programmers in Ukraine, like are you gonna pay them in dollars? Like they're gonna put in a house? No, that's not. It doesn't work over there. Crypto. So, I think that's where we're gonna see the biggest. I don't think it's there yet because if if my dad or my mom wanted to buy something in some foreign country on the other side of the world, I mean, how are they going to figure out this Bitcoin payment? Like that's not currently so straightforward, but just wait. As soon as it gets there, like
it's coming.
It's going to be big.
So
there's something there. There's no question.
Would you consider possibly down the road, like, hey, Greg, I own this plant. I package a lot of gloves and stuff, and
pay me in Bitcoin. Fine, go ahead. I don't care. I mean, we'll have to figure out how do we like logistically set it up, but like, sure, why not? I mean, I don't know. I mean, sure. You get paid in Bitcoin, you convert it over, you sell it, you convert it over dollars. I mean, you have to have the infrastructure to handle that, right? You can talk about the volatility of that currency, but go ahead, make the exchange the next. I mean, it's not. I don't think that's that big of a deal. So, but again, I think what we haven't seen for any of you software developers out there is an easy platform to like. How do I accept Bitcoin, right? And how do I pay in Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin?
Love it.
I had to throw that in there,
Absolutely. Two more questions for you, Greg. Clearly you've had some success in your business, and kudos to once again being a family man. But not every business is doing well right now. There's a lot of struggling businesses out there. You and I are fortunate to be in industries that are still not just evolving but exponentially growing. But there are a lot of struggling businesses out there as well. What advice would you have for a struggling family business, sole proprietor, et cetera, right now? What advice would you have for them that are experiencing some adversity?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple things. One, and this is, and this is right now a time, no matter what, you're doing well or you're not doing well. As always, this is time to reflect on your business, and you have to look like, one, do I have idea? Do I have a you talk about entrepreneurial spirit? Do I have a strat? Do I have enough information to say, okay, my business isn't doing well. Here are the things that I think I can do to make it do well, and try and execute on those things, and then evaluate at that point, right? Like, do I have that? I mean, I think about my local dry cleaner. Obviously, like, people weren't dry cleaning their shirts because they're all wearing t-shirts, right? Like, so if I'm the local dry cleaner, is there ways that I can, lower my credit card fees by maybe using a Square reader, right? Or is it time to do a delivery service? Maybe again, I'll use the local dry cleaner example, right? Like, they typically don't do the dry cleaning there. They go to some like lower cost mass facility where they send the shirts or the pants or whatever, right? So maybe I can launch a delivery service, right? Like, there's drivers and Uber drivers who aren't working as much, right? So can I put something together? So I think really this is the time. If whenever your business isn't doing well, you need to look at what's going on and what can you change, and then see if that bumps up your business. I mean, it's the same thing in marketing, right? You try marketing programs, and some of them are great, and some of them work. Some of them are expensive, and some of them don't work. Some of them you never use, and so that doesn't work.
A and B
And
testing. Just continue trying.
yeah, and if that doesn't work, maybe it's time to exit the business. Like, not all businesses are a good business, right? Like, there's a product life cycle, there's a business life cycle. I mean, if you were somehow Blockbuster just came up in a conversation. Like, dude, if you're in DVD rental, like, there's nothing. I mean, you're not, but like, there's nothing I can tell you, right? Like, doesn't work. Like, if you're a restaurant, and a lot of restaurants pivoted to delivery. I actually have a good friend of mine who's in the pizza business, and makes really high end pizzas. They're great. He started with a food truck. He opened a brick and mortar store. And now he's got a flash frozen product, right? And so it's just about, like, the restaurant was closed. So what do you do? Like, great. I got to figure something out. What do I do? And you got to keep doing that. Don't just accept that, right? Or get out of the business.
Pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah, and look for people in your space that are doing, interesting things. I mean, I don't know, if we think about, even look at retail. I mean, look at what your brick and mortar retail. I mean, look at what Target was able to do with their online sales, right? Like, or their pickup. I was reading something about the online order, and physical pickup, and how that, I think that's a technology change, right? The fact, one of the beauties, I think, of Amazon isn't, for me, it was never like that I could get everything in one place. For me, it was, if I ordered something, it was that Prime. It was that I know. And then, you know what? I don't even. It's not even 2 days. And I don't know if you remember, Mike. It was, Prime was 2 day delivery. It wasn't even that. It was just, I know when I'm gonna get it, right? Like, I know if I order it, it could have been 9 days, right? But I know in nine, and I order something. Is that sufficient for me? Can I wait that long? If so, great. If not, you know, I think if you are an online business today, and if your customer at the point of checkout doesn't know exactly when they're going to get their product, like, you're
I wouldn't do it.
better.
I wouldn't hit that
No,
panic
no.
button.
I mean, maybe if, like, you're the only place that sells this random, like we talked about, DVD stream. I don't know what DVD, whatever it is. Like, fine, but most people aren't selling one-off products online. So,
I hear you, man. Yeah,
and then
you nailed it. I think just pivot and take a step back, reflect, as you mentioned, and
you got to keep doing that. I think about my grandfather, right? Like, he ended up with the plastic bag sealer. If that didn't work out, I'm sure he would have found something else. I mean, we literally have, like, still at the factory, some of the early other, like, things that this company got a group of people to develop electronics and figure things out. So you see what works.
absolutely. And last question for you, brother. You're clearly an advocate of technology. I mean, as a Bay Arean, probably
Yeah.
it comes with the territory, and you've seen a lot of success in this specific business. But if it wasn't for packaging, or if it wasn't for the family biz, is there
Mm.
another passion that Mr. Greg Berguig wants to experience in his lifetime, dabble in before calling it a day?
I'm pretty wrapped into what I'm currently doing. For a long time, food. I love food. I love cooking. I love feeding. I love the experience when you make something, and I love entertaining. And I love that. Creating those experiences for people. So,
Oh yeah,
it would be somewhere in that space right now. To be honest, I'm really wrapped up in sustainability. Um, like I am like deep into that and like so focused on packaging and plastics and recycled content. And we got our trade show coming up, and we've got this 90+% recycled content. There's these new, what's called, if you take a look, don't forget, Mike, ocean bound plastics, where there are these plastics that come within basically they're in third world countries or in Mexico or different places where people collect them within 30 miles of the coastline, like plastic waste, and they're paid for it. And then it's recycled and made in new packaging.
that's
There's
amazing.
stuff going on with paper and going, I know, you get a lot of, I'm sure your wife, like mine and whatnot, orders a lot of clothing online, or you got a kid, right? How many times you get plastic bags with clothing? Yeah, you're shaking your head no, but you're saying yes, right?
Oh no, I'm
Plastic,
shaking my head because I see 4 or 5 packages a day in front of my house.
exactly, and a lot of that is plastic, and while it's recyclable, it's not curbside and blah blah. So I'm really focused on turning that and making some paper alternatives to that. So I am neck deep. I think if we have a conversation in 6 months, I'll say, okay, I'm where that needs to be. Let's go on the next, and probably something in the food eating space. I can't imagine how not at some point. So, but
I
we
hear
shall
you.
see, right? That's the beauty of life. You get to keep going and trying new things, and
Yep.
you have experience in software sales, different types of software sales, and I think you just keep on going, see what happens. So
I hear you, man. And I think you know that it's always something I wanted to dabble in. You've been at my house over for lunch.
I have.
I like to cook, so I think I dabble in the food space as well. I'm not sure how good I'd be at it or what that
No,
process
it's
looks like.
hard.
Yeah, I heard.
Think about how many immigrants go into the food industry because that's what they know when they open up a restaurant. But I mean, it is hard work. It's about, it's low margin. It's about volume in many cases. I mean, you got that.
Volatility,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. So
24/7. Yeah, no,
for now, I'll leave it as a passion.
you and me both. Well, Greg, really appreciate your time, my man. Clearly, your story is inspiring from education all the way to the family business and now dabbling in a space that's essential. Kudos to you. Keep going, brother. And don't forget to stay in touch.
Sounds good, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Sales biz, love it. So appreciate it.
Appreciate it, brother. Talk to you soon.